Hello, welcome everyone who's coming on. Welcome to all my replay viewers and everyone who's showing up. Thanks for joining me today. Right now we're just looking at my jewelry box, waiting for people to show up. I wanted to give everyone a little bit of time to get their notifications. Okay guys, I'm going to flip my camera around so I can talk with you guys. Hello. My name is Keely. I'm the owner of LoveHopeAdventure.com. I blog about the marriage relationship, intimacy in marriage, different things that you can do to have a good relationship with your spouse. And I've been married to my sweetheart for 13 years. We started out in high school, started dating when we were, I was 16 and Austin was also 16. And when I started this scope, you guys were looking at my jewelry box. And this was sitting on top of it, and Austin actually gave me this for my 18th birthday, so, yeah. And he also gave me that jewelry box, so it's kind of cool to have these things in our marriage now. Today I wanted to talk to you about some things that we do in our marriage that are mistakes, the mistakes we make in our marriage. And there are a lot of mistakes that we make, right? But some of them can be more, there's never a mistake that we make that can't be reversed in some way or another. So you can always get back from these mistakes, if you know what I mean. And so today I wanted to talk with you about some of the things that I know that Austin and I did at the start of our marriage, some things that, we've learned from, things I've seen other people do, and that we've learned from with them as well. Some of the mistakes are financial. And if you're looking at the amount of stress of things that cause stress in marriage, finance is actually one of the top things. I wouldn't say that finances caused us like a lot of fights, but we've definitely had some issues with our finances. For example, we had a little bit of debt that we took on in the beginning. Well, not right when we got married, but when we started having children. Just the cost of having kids is really a lot, and we had both worked really hard to come into the marriage debt-free, but, just having kids was kind of expensive, so we had to put some of that stuff on, on credit, and we had to get on some payment plans, and we just had a lot of unexpected things happen to us throughout the year, so there have been some times in our marriage where we have had debt, and I think it's a really big problem for married couples to take on debt. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about buying a house. If you think you got to buy a car and get a loan for that, maybe that's understandable too, but debt of other kinds can bring a lot of stress into your marriage because no two people run finances the same. And one of you is going to think that this debt should get paid off before that debt, and that the processes should be different. So I think that you just bring a lot of added stress to your marriage that isn't necessary by taking on unreasonable debt. I'm not saying you shouldn't go have a baby because, I had no idea the cost would be as much as it was to have the babies, at least my first one. So I was pretty prepared for it with my second child. By the time I had my third kid, though, there was just a lot of other surgeries that happened that same year that we couldn't plan for. And so we've always tried really hard to plan for those unexpected things. But sometimes you can't plan for everything and you do have to take on debt. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the two of you just running your finances without any checks and balances and spending more than what you're earning on a regular basis. So that is a mistake that we can make in marriage, spending our money, improperly. Another problem financially is not checking in with one another about the finances. Neither one of you guys, or only one of you guys, having any clue whatsoever about the budget. Not having a budget, not sticking to the budget, only one person paying all of the bills and making all the purchases. I mean, any number or combination of things can be mistakes in marriage. If both people don't have a very clear understanding of what's happening in the budget, it can cause a lot of fighting. Because if this person spends more than the one who's running the budget thinks they should spend, you've got problems. And the problems are you're telling this person who's an income earning individual in the home, they can't spend their own money. So that's a mistake that we make in marriages. We don't run our finances together. People will both spend without really any, accountability with each other. Some other mistakes that I see couples make, we didn't really have this problem, is not detaching from family. So I talked to couples where one of the spouses kind of just never left home and allows their parents and their family to have a lot of say in what goes on in their home, and that's never healthy. So if that's you and you're in that situation, yeah, a lot of mistakes. You don't distance yourself enough from the family. Now, we had it pretty easy because we moved as soon as we got married. And I think this is why we didn't struggle with this as much, because we moved pretty much right away. I'm sorry, I can't see my screen. I need to scoot down a little. And so we didn't have to worry about either one of us being too attached to our families because we didn't live near them. And we had to go ahead and figure a lot out on our own. And I see that as a huge positive for our marriage. But I know a lot of people who get married and they live in the same town as their families, they really struggle because they feel a lot of pressure from their families to do things or to continue living as if they are still, living with them. So continuing to relate to the parents and the siblings and everyone else as if they're still single and living at home. So I think that can be a big mistake that people make. Not detaching enough from your family and establishing new boundaries and new rules and things like that. And I think, sometimes parents can become a problem in that because they're not ready to let go of their kid. What parent is, right? I'm not going to be. Now this one's a really big one. I think most of us do this in our marriage, this mistake. So if you haven't done this, good, kudos to you, right? Trying to change the other person. I think most people in marriage make this mistake. We try to change our partner. We try to make them be something that we want them to be. And a lot of the reason we do this is we just don't understand the differences of our personalities. We don't understand that they look at life completely different. I don't know a single couple out there, and I've met a lot of couples, I don't know a single couple out there that doesn't approach life different. Most of the time, it's like opposites attract. You've got the extrovert and the introvert. And if you've read anything about these two different personalities, you'll know that they don't live in the same world. It's like we just approach life completely different. Our communication styles are different. The way we look at things is different. The way, it's not always intentional, but it definitely happens. Yes, in Wellness, Wendy, she says that we don't always try to change the other person, but it happens. And I completely agree with that. Maybe we even try to change them in really subtle ways by, just kind of nagging or maybe saying something or whatever it is, just however we subtly are trying to change them. Now, does that mean that you aren't going to change your spouse to some degree? Yes, I think you are. I think if you have been in a long-term marriage and you have a healthy relationship with one another, your spouse is definitely going to rub off on you. But it's not going to be because they have forced you to that place. It won't be because they forced you into it. I used to really, I still struggle with this, but I don't do very good at relaxing and just kind of sitting down and chilling out. My husband is really good at that, and I've learned how important that is for me and my body to do that, and I've learned it from him. He didn't force me to do that, so and so Wendy says she's got the extrovert introvert thing going on. I do too. Every couple I know, one of them is an extrovert and one is an introvert. I don't know why, you know what I mean? I don't know why we're attracted to the opposite or what. I really don't know. But I've never seen two extroverts together or two introverts together. Maybe they do, but I don't know how well it works out, honestly. I don't know. I personally don't think it would be any easier to be married to someone who was exactly like me. I think we'd get less accomplished. So, I don't think it would work. I think that you do need to marry someone who has the strengths that you our week in. And so that's why I think a lot of times we definitely get married to someone who's completely opposite. And I'm going to tell you, most of my best friends are all introverts. I am like 99% extroverted on the personality test, and every one of my friends is, and my husband included, are all introverts. Okay, so I have a lot of introverts in my life, and it's really interesting to me. I only have one friend that is a really, really close friend who's an extrovert, and I'm his friend because I'm friends with his wife first, and she's the introvert. So I'm not saying I don't have any extroverted friends, but I'm talking about like my deepest relationships are all with the same personality. So, except for the one friend. Another mistake that we make, I couldn't be an introvert and be the sex talk lady. Well, I don't know. You know what I think? I think the introverts, like, the internet is really awesome for them because they can just really share a lot of things they wouldn't feel comfortable saying to someone face to face. So I don't know. Maybe. I haven't asked the personality of the other bloggers that are in my area. I haven't asked them if they're introverts or extroverts. I know one of them is an introvert though, and he's able to talk, but he's an anonymous blogger. So maybe that's what they do. They just stay anonymous. Okay, so another mistake in marriage that we make is we fight over small things. And this is not just in your first year of marriage. Don't we all continually fight over really small things? It's like we're fighting over, the way to load the dishes, or where, you should put your dirty clothes at night, or whatever, right? We fight over these really tiny small things. And we let it bother us so much because the other person isn't seeing things the priority the way we do. So we really want the dishes loaded this way because, whatever, this is the right way to do it. And they don't see that. And so we end up fighting over it. And there could be a lot of other really small things too. And who knows what even sparks those things? Like, you get to the end of these fights sometimes and you're like, why did we just fight over this? Why did we fight over you spending $4 today? Or why did we fight over you not doing this thing that I asked you to do, or whatever? And I think a lot of times we have to realize that there's always an underlying problem going on. And this is why we fight over the small stuff and we avoid the actual issue. So we end up having a lot of these same small fights because it's really got all the same underlying problem. And until you can understand that there is an underlying problem going on, you will continue to have the same small fight. And I had some friends over this weekend. They're newly married, only about a year. And I was telling them, I'm like, guys, y'all will probably have these same fights the majority of your marriage. I mean, Austin and I do. And it's still some of that same core issues that, we deal with because of our personalities and how we handle life and approach things very differently. We kind of always have those same fights because of it. Another thing that I think we do, and as way of mistakes in marriage, is we forget to check in with each other. And that doesn't necessarily mean just committing to doing things without talking to your spouse that affects your spouse, but also committing to doing things that affects you. And maybe doesn't necessarily affect your spouse. Either way, you should definitely be checking in with your spouse about taking on commitments, because ultimately anything you're doing in your life is going to affect your marriage. And you can't run your life like you're single. So if you're going to make a decision that is going to affect you, you definitely need to let your spouse know about it. Another issue that I think we have in marriages is we don't give our spouse enough space, whatever that looks like for them. Whether it's giving them a space in the home that belongs to them, because remember, guys, you're sharing your bedroom with your spouse, and they need a space that they can have that is theirs. Whether it's just their half side of the bed, you stay out of it, or whatever. They need to have their place they keep their clothes and you don't get into it. They need to have, a certain chair they sit in even. Or maybe a specific spot in the house that just, it's theirs. And maybe they don't get a whole room or whatever that's just theirs, but we don't give our spouses the space they need. Maybe we don't give them the time away from the home that they need, or maybe we don't encourage them to spend time with other people or whatever it is. So there's plenty of things that I mean by this that we have as far as mistakes. We don't allow our spouse the ability to be an individual. And we have to do that because marriage is so hard in that you are one person, you are a union, but you're still two individuals. And that is so hard to achieve because you do need to act and think and move forward in unity, but you got to have the time where you act as just, you're just who you are. You're nobody's wife, you're nobody's mom, you're nobody's dad. You're just who you are, right? And the last thing that I was going to talk to you guys today about that I think is a huge mistake. I see lots and lots and lots of people making this mistake. They stop going on dates. This is a huge mistake in marriage. People aren't going on dates. That's already difficult enough. But people aren't taking time for each other either. Okay, so maybe going out on dates wasn't always that big a deal, but people had more time for one another at one time in our culture. People were much more relationship oriented. They didn't have television to distract them all night. I mean, people would sit around and they would talk at the end of the day. They would eat dinner together. They weren't carting kids off to all these different sports and, whatever else is going on in the day. People were not as busy as they are now. And I think if you're not taking time for dates, then you're really doing a disservice for your marriage. And I'm not saying you have to go out of the house to have a date. You can have an at-home date. We do this pretty often because we can't always find sitters and we can't always afford to do the going out. So, and Wendy says that they do date night every single Wednesday, even if it's a game night at home. And that's great. Whatever works for this season of your life. My husband and I get Wednesday night dates because our kids are in a program right now. And we actually have a work date. This is not what I would consider to be a romantic date or really quality time together necessarily, but it is us out in public doing something. And then we just have a lot of other times where we are intentionally talking with each other. And we have a lot of time during the day to talk because of the flexibility of his job and the fact that I make money from home and I work from home. So my flexibility of the way I work, we actually get to hang out in the mornings together and have lunch together a lot of days and that sort of thing. So if you're not making date night a priority, you're really damaging your marriage because you're not allowing that relationship to continue to flourish. You guys are more like roommates, just doing your own thing. Both going to work every day and carting kids around and going to bed at night. So dates are very important. And those are kind of some of the top things that I definitely see people making mistakes in marriage. And that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. So if you want to see what I've been blogging about or what's on my mind this week, definitely check me out at lovehopeadventure.com. And I should be on this time tomorrow between 12:30 and 1. Thanks for joining me.